Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest webinar for International Trade Week. My name is Carey Trevill. I'm the CEO at the British Promotional Merchandise Association, and I've got two fantastic speakers with me today who I'd love to introduce. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves first and foremost. So Leanne, could I ask you to introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'm Leanne. I'm Head of Transformation at St Luke's, London, and my role is looking at how we use innovation to shape brand building.
Fantastic. Angela.
Thanks, Carey. I'm Angela Wagstaff, Director of Allwag Promotions, and also proud President of the British Promotional Merchandise Association.
Some stuff. So we're in great company. So we're going to be talking about putting your brand in their hands today. And the reason we've invited Leanne and Angela to come and talk is because they represent both sides of the marketing coin, particularly on digital and physical merchandise. So I've got some particularly gritty questions for you both. And I think what we want to kick off first with is, I think for Leanne, I'm going to come to you first with this one. When we're starting to think about immersive technology and branding merchandise, what are we thinking about in terms of communication strategy? Because obviously as marketeers, we're all out there thinking about how we're going to get our brand out there. What are we going to do about that immersive technology and that connection? How do we get that immersive piece in and really connect with people? So I'm going to chuck that one at you first to see how you can tackle that one.
Oh, lucky me. Well, our job is all about building brands, and that means changing what's going on in people's heads. So in order to do that, we need to give them meaning and build memory structures so that they actually start thinking and engaging with our brands. That all sounds lovely, but people really don't want to think about brands. They're very busy. We all are. Technology has been a wonderful thing, but it's also made our lives a lot more frantic and a lot more busy. So it's a fiercely fought battle to try and get that attention in people's minds. So any way that we can actually get people to actively engage rather than passively is a really powerful tool to help really build those memory structures and make people think about your brands. So no one wants to spend a minute longer than they have to on an insurance website. I mean, how dull is that? But show them a meerkat toy and they'd happily spend time with that. So I think it's just kind of a different approach that builds that deeper engagement. And if we can turn brands into immersive experiences that can really entertain and educate, then these experiences become personal and memorable and really stay with people. And really, I think we can look at it at any stage of this journey. It could be a kind of billboard on the street that has you wearing a coat that really stays with you rather than a model. Or it could be, you know, IKEA have done a great thing where you can get the sofa and put it in your living rooms and show virtually what it looks like to help you make that decision at a purchase point. So it can really be anywhere in the comms journey. But the key thing is, I think it needs to be considered upstream as part of the brand planning, not as an afterthought.
Definitely not so nice. So I think we talk about those really sticky moments. So Angela, what about you? What about your thought about in that lasting impact? Because also we're talking about something physical and what that means, particularly in our communication strategies today. Over to you on that one.
Okay. I think for me, I'm creating merchandise, which is great fun, especially knowing the positive impact it can have and how important it is in the marketing mix. I think it's a fabulous way to communicate. You're talking about tangible sort of assets, as it were, but it is a case of making sure you choose the right product. I'm sure we all remember being given a gift and the delight it brings, and the most important thing there is the quality, because that gives us the perception of the brand that we're talking about. And I think the more useful the product, the longer the brand and its message is going to be seen, and that's so important. Nobody really wants something that's just not going to last, particularly in this day and age. I think no matter what the gift is, the impact is what counts and how you feel involved and engaged with it. And we certainly want that to be a positive one, positive engagement.
Absolutely. And I think probably brings me on to my next question for you then, Angela. We must have some great examples out there. We know we've got great examples. So what kind of things can you share with us about great brands who've done something really successful and possibly where they've used some of those emerging technologies? So Leanne will come into afterwards, but Andrew, can I kind of pick your brains on, so you must have some good examples up your sleeve.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's the ones that I can give are the ones that reflect kind of that power of physical merchandise. particularly when it's in the hands of, let's just say, a celebrity or a much followed influencer. We've recently had an experience where we work with UCL, University College London, and support their merchandising. And a few weeks ago, we had a wonderful surprise when we were contacted by ITV to ask about the bags that Sarah Jessica Parker had been snapped using in Manhattan. Unbeknown to us, it had been reported that morning by the Daily Mail, and it featured a story about what she was doing and the fact that she'd been out shopping. I think it was very much the message that the striking design, you know, ethically sourced bag and all the rest of it really hit home with a lot of people, and we had great demand. That's really important because, again, it's creating that experience and having something that you want to keep. I think for us also, over the years, we've worked with people like Prue Ride London, where that's very different to that celebrity experience, but certainly getting immersed in a weekend-long cycling event, I would say. Not necessarily my thing, but certainly seeing London awash with Prudential Red has an amazing impact. But knowing that we were working alongside an agency who was working with us to create that real impactful experience for everybody, whether it be family, whether it be friends, with the tech that went alongside it. We created water bottles, collections of merchandise that was testament to cyclists and particularly their success of climbing Box Hill in Surrey as part of their route. So I think seeing the bottles even now, and I saw one only last week, it gives me that proud parent moment, I think. And even just before we came on air, we were just sprung to mind the story, not one of ours, I'm afraid, but when Coca-Cola launched their Share a Coke campaign and swapping its name for your name on the bottle, they saw the sales increase massively when the hashtag Share a Coke just rocketed on social media. So we know just by adding personalisation to merchandise, which has been done for years, but using the right technology behind it, the QR codes, the interaction makes such a difference to a piece of merchandise, because then we know that we can also look at its impact and we can see and understand that deeper connection. I know, Leanne, you've got a great experience of one of your campaigns, I think particularly for Beavertown.
Yeah, we did something kind of flashed up at the beginning there with Beavertown. It was a interactive mural. So we built a mural taking the cues from the brand world that sits on the glassware, which apparently is highly nickable. So we knew that people liked it. And we created a mural about the kind of little characters who had landed in their spacecraft. And if you scan the QR code, that got brought to life and you saw them all kind of scramble across East London and try and take over. So that was a really interesting example that we did. But there are a few examples from other brands that I kind of wanted to point to. I think I have a slide somewhere as a bit of a cheat. I think if we get onto the next slide that's in there are a few other examples.
Great fun though.
I can talk to them anyway. Yeah, no. As much as I love to plug the work that we've done, I think there are some really great examples that other brands have done. The one on the left there is a bit old now, I guess 2018 is quite a long time ago, but I think it's a fantastic example of a product sitting at the heart of it. And what they did was they created a filter that allowed you to show the reindeer coming into your living room and eating the carrots that you'd bought from McDonald's to put out for your reindeer, and it helped capture the magic of Christmas. Budweiser, that's a brilliant example in the middle there, where the product became the merch, and they created different cans to represent different nations in the World Cup, and they each had little characters that got brought to life. And then this one is just kind of a personal favorite on the right there, Nintendo Mario Kart. So everyone loves Mario Kart, but they've taken it one stage further, and you can now play in your actual living room. So, you know, avoiding your cat crashing into your kitchen cupboards, it just takes on that extra layer of engagement when you bring that virtual world into your world. So I thought that was a lovely example.
Definitely. I've done a bit of Mario Kart in my own living room, but apparently my kids say I'm not allowed to play. I'm too competitive these days. So that's another story. So we've got some, just also let you know that obviously while we're going through all of this, we've got a chance for questions as well a bit afterwards. So please do think if this is inspiring you to think, I really want to ask a question, please pop those up on and we'll come to those afterwards. So I think, Leanne, you've obviously showed some really lovely examples there. We've got that really deep brand experience. I think if we're looking at the role that they're playing from a consumer perspective, we talked about that connectivity. Is there anything else that we would think of that we should be thinking about in terms of that connectivity and what consumers, because those all look really straightforward, but is there anything else you wanted to add on to that at all?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, tech can do a lot of things, but one of the things that we at St. Luke's are really, really strict on and passionate about is creating distinctive brand worlds. If you can create worlds for your brand that are distinct, interesting, memorable, it makes your brand unforgettable and it makes it kind of relevant to people. And if you can take that brand world and you can bring it into the real world using things like AR, so some of those examples there, it can really kind of make you feel much more affinity with your customers, and it means that you just feel more relevant to them, and it's much more memorable because it's personal to you. So the Beavertown example I talked about there, we showed Space Raiders at the beginning, which was a kind of filter that you can use for our Space Raiders crisps, where you can film yourself as an alien doing some kind of little message to your earthling friends, and you can share that, and it instantly just becomes fun and it becomes shareable. Yeah, and then Heathrow there on the left, we used a filter to help people inspire others to go on a ski trip and look at all the amazing areas you could go to from Heathrow. So these ones really are just examples of how taking those distinctive brand worlds into people's real worlds can really deepen that connection. And they all have a big idea at the heart, and they all sit as part of a bigger campaign. So I think that's a really important thread that comes throughout all of this, which is it needs to be integral to the rest of your campaign. It can't just be an add-on. And I think that's where you really unlock the real potential.
Excellent stuff. So I think, you know, obviously we've talked a little bit here about how innovation is going to transform things. Andrew, do you feel that these things ought to be working together on their own? What do we do about bringing them together? You've given a couple of good examples there already about that, but, you know, what do we do with them? Do we bring them together to work together, do you think?
I think they can work together really well. And, you know, I love just as each campaign or each client evolves and new technologies evolve, it becomes more and more exciting about what you can do with products and how you can use them, and you bring them to life even more so than their practical use, which is wonderful. I think research is showing us that our attention spans are reducing thanks to all the technology that we have, and we have that greater desire for distraction. It's not just me, but that lends itself to making the most out of both the physical merchandise, but linking the two together so that yes, while you're on screen, you know, let's be honest, how many of us are watching TV whilst we're on our phones, whilst we're on our laptops, looking at something else, touching something else? And I think greater thought is now being given to how we brand our merchandise, to include those call to actions that trigger the interaction with tech and social media. I think the thing for that as marketeers also allows us better tracking, better measurement through the digital mechanisms. And that's really important, because a piece of physical merchandise can't give you those answers, but when it's linked together, it's really powerful. And that's where, you know, from my perspective, we've seen the demand in products that can activate, but also activate us, our senses. It's anything from the touch and feel of a garment to an appealing design. You know, the whole scratch and sniff is coming back with the smells and the wanting us to appeal to everyone in all of our walks of life and everything we do. I think also, you know, I mentioned the water bottle earlier, that's increased. It's not just a water bottle now, it's a water bottle linked to an app where technology is allowing us to monitor our water intake and then alert us when we need some more. So, you know, again, the data that's collected through that is really powerful for the health industry, and possibly the insurance industry. And then the whole thing becomes very interconnected and powerful on the data scene, and particularly with AI, as we know, that's pushing forward. But when that app can tell you to take another drink, it seems fairly simple, but in the scheme of things, I think it's quite broad. And I think that's what makes it great for us. You know, we may just be producing merchandise, but it's more than that. It's that integral part. So we're always looking for something that's unique, can stand out, but more importantly, has a purpose. And that purpose can really be heightened by the use of technology.
Excellent. So while we talk about all of these really lovely sticky triggers in there, lots of really useful insight for everyone listening in today who's thinking about how we're going to get that brand in their hands. One thing we do need to think about is sustainability. So I'm going to put Andrew on the spot here a little bit on that one, because when we're thinking about, obviously, in BPMA, we're part of Net Zero. We're all very concerned about our planet and how we're buying more sustainably as businesses, as people, and what we do. What sort of things are the considerations people listening today ought to be thinking about when thinking about sustainability as that ground, especially when we talk about physical goods?
I think this is a meaty subject, Carey. So I'll keep it short. I think impact, obviously, of climate change, everything that's been brought forward by COVID, and our desire to be at one with nature, also should come through to our day-to-day lives, and we have a lot to consider. I think it's fair to say that many opinions on what makes a product more sustainable is still very much open for debate or healthy discussion, because I think there isn't an answer at the moment as to what the best option is. I think I've spent the last couple of years creating a product grading scheme for merchandise, but there's so many elements to consider. And I think it's whether you're thinking about how and where it was manufactured, the materials used and their source, the branding methods that we can't take for granted, because we want to make sure they're as sustainable as possible, with the technology and the move forward of inks and substrates and processes. Making sure that we're choosing the most sustainable branding method in itself is a task. We then look at how it's packaged, the type of packaging, and that all lends itself to how the product then travels. I think the CO2 emissions and how we offset our carbon or reduce our carbon is really important, and is a key focus for a lot of our supply chain, because transporting it from A to B and even C and D further down the line, depending on where it's going, is important but difficult to track, and it's something we're all working hard to get to grips with. We've spoken about impressions and kind of long-lasting products. Longevity of a product is key, but also what happens to it at the end of its life, and how do we make sure that we dispose of it responsibly, and that we give it that longevity. I think it's a huge challenge and an ongoing journey at the moment, especially where there's so many opinions, thought leaders, and of course, the topic of greenwashing, making sure that we get it right. I think the key at the moment is about being transparent in the supply chain, to be able to share that information, and that needs kind of those trusted partnerships, and we're lucky to work with some great manufacturers here, particularly in the UK. I think there's lots that we can do, but also in terms of using technology to monitor a lot of that as well, and we're going to see a whole tranche of mechanisms, apps and technologies coming forward to help us with that. But I think it's something now that's very much inherent in our purchasing choices.
Excellent. As you say, a very meaty subject, and I suspect we've got a whole different session on that one altogether, but thank you, it's really useful, because I think when we're thinking about those merchandise choices, how we buy them is very important, and also who we buy them from. Excuse me. So I think this probably leads me neatly to how we're measuring success. And I think, so Leanne, I wanted to kind of put that question to you really, because I'm particularly interested in measuring. I've done all sorts of intangible measurements on experiential. We're looking at it very much in the merchandise sector as well. But from your side of things, do you think that we've got the right measures in place when we're talking about some of these emerging technologies? Things have been around for a while. Do we have enough rigor? I know that you guys have got quite a strong, I have a very strong point of view about measurement, always, and anyone who knows me knows I bang on about this all the time. But what's your view on measurement, and how we get to grips and how this is looked at as being effective? I'd love to know your view on that.
I think, well, the short answer is we need to get better at it, and we don't currently have the same tools at our disposal and ability to be able to measure ROI in the same way that we do other elements of the advertising mix. If you take something like TV, by nature, I think, of the level of media investment that goes alongside that, we have got really robust measures in place so that clients of ours can tell exactly what the ROI is for every pound spent in media. we don't have that same level of rigor when it comes to this area, and we need to get there because we need to be able to prove a success. It's a lot easier to do it at the lower end of the funnel, classic, always is. You can track through to sales from AR quite easily, but what you can't do when you start getting to brand engagements, you end up going for a bit kind of softer, fluffier measurement of engagements and things like that. So I think we need to get better at that in order to be able to demonstrate value in the kind of upper funnel, because the risk is if we don't do that, people default to the thing you can measure. And as we know, it's sometimes the things that are harder to measure that really do create that bigger long-term value. So we need to be able to improve our ability to test that in order to do it. That's not to say that nothing's been done. So Snap, I know, have done a lot of tests of looking at people who are consuming different media, and looked at heart rates and found that AR consistently is a more immersive media.
Right.
They've also linked how immersed you are with future purchases, and they can predict that with 84% accuracy. But what we're really lacking is third-party data, because Snap have a vested interest in saying that the AR and filters work. So what we'd really like to see is some more third-party options that allow us to test more robustly.
Excellent. So before we come on to the questions, Andrew, I think if you've got anything that you would share in terms of measurement from your side of the fence on that side.
Yeah, I think, again, it's trickier, even more so from what Leanne's saying, at our side of the fence, because as part of the supply chain, we find it harder to gather data because we're reliant on what our clients measure, and do they measure merchandise? Not always, no, unfortunately. Hence why I'm keen for the mechanisms to be put in place to get someone else to do all that hard work. Only this week at the BPMA board meeting, we were agreeing kind of what research to carry out to measure impact and engagement of merchandise, which, is critical to know, does this work well or not? And that is important. I think our research in 2020 gave us some, valuable stats, knowing that consumers that receive branded items 52% will recommend a product or a service, and also over the years we've seen different data come through, but always fairly consistent in a positive light, to know that more people feel engaged with a company that gives them something, or with a brand that gives them something. I know that YouGov did some research as well that we often fall back on, with the 77% of consumers expect brands to adopt sustainable practices. So that links back to what I was saying earlier, to help consumers live more sustainably. So I think data is a huge area that we would like to improve upon. But I think all in all, what we do know from a positive point of view, that it gives that interaction, and buyers or consumers are more likely to either buy something or recommend something as a result of being given a piece of branded merchandise.
Excellent stuff. Well, listen, I think what we've got about 5 minutes left or so. So we've got 1 or 2 questions that have come up, and I just think we'll probably use those. And I just having a quick look to the chat here. A really interesting question. So where we've got to think about, somebody's asked a question about, we don't have a logo. We've got something that's named after a founder. What would we do? Do you have a logo or not? What's the expression? I'd be interested to see, maybe Leanne, put that one to you from the ad agency side of life, and then maybe to Angela on that question.
Yeah, I'd say creating a brand world can come from anywhere. I think sometimes it can come from a logo, but there will be other distinctive assets that you can create out of your brand. So it may be a logo or word mark, it may be brand colors, it may be a tone of voice that feels consistent, and it may be brand design elements. So I don't think you absolutely have to have a logo. Very helpful because it is a shortcut, but there are other elements that you can build on. And in fact, if you're going to create a brand world, it can't just be a logo, because you need more than that.
Yeah, excellent. Angela, what would your view be from that side?
I'd echo what Leanne's saying. I mean, it's about creating an identity, maybe, as opposed to a logo. It's about a community. It's about getting your message across. So as long as you can get your message across, for whatever your, service company may be, then I think it's really important. So as long as your ethos of your business is mirrored throughout everything that you do, you can identify with that in its world. So it's about creating that community of ethos, message, identity, however you choose to do it. People do like to identify. We all like a favourite sports team, colour, whatever it might be. So there's things that you can do that give us that identity.
Absolutely. And listen, we've had a great discussion today, and we've covered all sorts of different areas. What I'd probably like to do, there's probably a few things I would have liked to also get under the skin of trends and all sorts of things, but we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and I'm hoping it's inspiring everyone. But what I'd love to know is if you're going to give some advice to those who are listening in today, what your top 3 takeaways. I love these kind of sessions. I want to go away and think about something I can do straight away, put into my brand strategy. What kind of things would you guys advise? Maybe if Leanne, could I come to you first for that one? What's your top picks for advice for our listeners to this session?
My 3 hot takes. I think that the first one is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I think you always challenge yourself. Why are we doing this? And why on earth would our audience engage with it? Because the competition for attention out there is huge. So you need a real reason to be doing what you're doing. The second is, obviously, go where your audience are, but also don't underestimate the power of creating something stand out and having wider reach from that. So lots of things that we see in the AR space are overseen and overheard. They're not necessarily engaged with there and then. And then the third one is just, it seems as though from an AR tech point of view, that blended reality seems to be where all the big companies are placing big bets. And it's certainly where, if you're looking for mass reach, it's the phones that are going to give you that, because you're not going to get mass reach for people buying headsets. So think about how you can get your brand in their hand.
Absolutely, and excellent advice there. So Angela, to you, what are your big takeaways that you would love people to know and think about?
Well, I think for me at the moment, particularly, I mentioned sustainability. So impact and longevity is key to a brand's successful campaign and the merchandise used within it, whether it be a single piece of merchandise given away at an event, or a must-have meerkat that you mentioned earlier, Leanne, as a collectible, and now extremely valuable collectible. You've got an opportunity to share a story of the product, how it's aligned with your brand. Make it a positive story, and by doing that, looking at your sustainable options, I think you really can make a difference. Second one would be creative. Be creative on every level, not only the design on your merchandise. I think it's important with shortening attention spans. There's a real opportunity to catch people's attention, use the physical to link to the technology and activate those responses, calls to action, and really inspire to get that action. And the third one has to be a little bit of a play to evaluate what we do. Think about the measurement at the beginning, how we can track the success, use the technology to help track it, because at the end of the day, we're all about understanding the return on investment. Was that a worthwhile purchase? Was that a worthwhile event? Was that a worthwhile campaign? So I think by thinking about what is my desired end result and how will I track that will make a huge difference. Yeah,
definitely. Those are really good piece of advice. So listen, we've covered an enormous amount of ground in a very, very short space of time. So we're hoping for everybody who's been listening into the session today that we've really inspired you about how you can really get your brand into people's hands. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Leanne Silman from St Luke's and from Angela Wagstaff from Allwag. This has been our International Trade Week webinar to talk about merchandise, digital and physical. So we'd like to wrap up the session now. Thank you to everyone who's listening. This session has been recorded as well, so you can come back and listen to all of this incredible advice all over again if you'd like to. So I'd like to say thank you very much to our speakers and to our audience for dialing in today, and it's been great to host this session. Thank you very much indeed.